How to manage your mind when the world is in chaos. Hey friend, it's Jen. I'm a coach and healer, and I'd love to welcome you back to Aligned TV, the place where you learn how to live the best life ever, starting on the inside. And today I welcome you to my bedroom, kind of. A funny story, last week I saw a spider up there somewhere and I thought, I'm going to get that guy later. As you might have guessed, later the spider was nowhere to be seen and I have no idea where he is now, but I hope he's living his best life back there somewhere. On a completely different note, things have been a little stressful recently. The recent election news has sent many people spiraling, myself being one of them. A lot of people I know felt that way. We really thought that one thing was going to happen and something else happened that was completely different. And of course, that felt very big, very heavy, and very end of the world-ish. This video today is not going to be talking about the politics per se, but we're going to talk about some of the little mindset traps that you might have fallen into that have made you feel worse about this whole situation. If you need a little mind refresher on how to manage your mind around the really big things in the world, this episode is for you. So tip number one that is so important to keep in mind when things seem chaotic and scary is that we never actually know what the future holds. This seems especially relevant at a time during an election. Like literally people thought something very, very different than what actually happened was going to happen. And so there becomes this internal chaos around this because when you think you can predict how the world is going to go, you feel somewhat safer in it. In fact, our brain is always trying to figure out how our life is going to go. And many of the times that we have internal chaos or mind drama about a certain situation in our life, it is really just the fact that our brain is not used to not having that sense of control. But of course, the reality here is our brain never really knows what's going to happen. We like to predict the future because that makes us feel safe. If we think we know what's going to happen, then we can chart a path for ourselves and we can feel like we are going to be safe moving into the future. But even when the things that you think are going to happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything that is going to happen. We don't know when the next terrorist attack is going to happen. We don't know what any particular world leader is going to do next. We like to think that electing a certain person into a role of power will somehow create a safer world for us, but we actually never know what reality is going to bring us. And maybe that is a big, scary thought for you right now. But for me, this actually brings some peace because in fact, I have been going through my whole entire life, never really knowing what the future holds. And this moment in time is no different than any other moment in time. However, there's a part 2 about this. I just spoke about this inside of my module for holiday stress inside my Healed program. But what an expectation is, or what an expectation hangover is a difference between the story you're writing in your mind and what is actually happening. Our brain likes to make that into a problem. If we didn't predict that this was going to happen, then something went wrong. And if something went wrong, then maybe we should have done something or said something or put more energy into it to control that outcome so it wouldn't have gotten wrong. However, as a person, as one singular person that you are on this planet, take the election, for example, like you can do your voting and you can do volunteering and you can do some things, even working for somebody, but you cannot control the whole outcome of the election, even though that is the kind of blame we are frequently putting on ourselves afterwards. So number one, we do not know what the future holds. But number two, when we don't know what the future holds, that can also create so much extra chaos in your mind. You might start spinning out and creating the worst possible outcomes for what you think is going to happen now. Because what you think was going to happen didn't happen, so it's automatically going to go the other way, right? It's automatically going to go to the worst possible scenario. I admit that's really hard again when we are speaking about a president that has actually already held power. So we probably can predict a little bit about what this person's going to do. But if you can come back down and think about the last time this happened, we had a lot of fears. And we had a lot of negative thoughts about what this person was going to do. And not every one of them turned out the way we thought it would, like for the worst. Not every disaster that we're running through in our mind actually happened. Maybe, yeah, some of them did happen, but not all of them. Is the exact same thing that is going to happen this time. Your brain likes to catastrophize. It likes to play out every last horrible thing because it thinks that doing that is going to help you feel safe. And if you can just run through all of those things, you'll have some idea about what's coming, and therefore you can protect yourself from all of these terrible things that are bound to happen. Number one, they're not all bound to happen. We have no proof that they're going to happen. And number two, letting your brain catastrophize like that is really an endless cycle. When you feel confused and lost and lonely, it's only natural to go out into the world and try to get more information. And this leads us to doing things like doom scrolling, where you're just sitting there and you're going through all the social media posts and all of the news articles, and you're trying to get your brain to wrap itself around this idea or this new reality. However, there's so many predictions and there's so many things being written online, and they all sound so terrible. So now, instead of feeling better, you actually have 25 more new worst case scenarios to worry about. Again, number one, we don't know what the future holds. But number two, now that you've been surprised, now that you're having an expectation hangover, please don't give in to the catastrophizing. The catastrophizing can literally never end, because I guarantee even when you think of 10 things that might happen, there will be 10 more beyond that that are waiting for you to obsess about. So it becomes this endless cycle of worrying. And it gets especially bad if you keep on reading the news and keep on putting more information into your mind and keep on feeding yourself new, more terrible outcome ideas. You just end up feeling worse and worse and worse. So it's this desire to get back in control, to educate yourself, that goes into overdrive and ends up creating this endless cycle of anxiety. So if this is resonating at all with you, you have my full permission to take a break. Of course, it is important to be informed, but being online 24/7, reading every last article and every last opinion piece is not good for your mental health. Another important point to keep in mind when you are doom scrolling is that news agencies and social media, everybody on the internet, basically, they are trying to capitalize on your attention. So the bigger and scarier the headline can be, and the more people click on that headline, the more money they make. So remember that you are feeding the monster. The more time and effort and energy you're putting into this, the more they get paid and the more this horrible cycle continues. Again, I know it is not enough for me to stop this horrible cycle of news and money and capitalism by me telling you this in a video, but it's a really good thing to remember. The news people are not there to be your friend. They are there to make money for the company that owns them. They're there to get clicks. They're there to get you to read. So take your power back and don't give in to the cycle. The next point I want to bring up today is that managing your mind is just as important when it comes to these big political world topics as it is when it comes to the little things in your life. Maybe you've done a lot of self-improvement work and you've gotten pretty good at managing your thoughts about everyday anxieties and stress, etc. Well, now it's time for you to take those same skills and apply them to the bigger picture. So I think sometimes people tell themselves, well, if I read it on the news, then I have to think that way. Then I have to take this idea and run with it. Because if I don't do that, then maybe I'm not a good citizen or an aware person. But again, remember, people are counting on you doom scrolling. They are counting on you reading their papers, their websites. They are counting on you to give them advertising dollars, and they will bend and manipulate the headlines emotionally in order to get your attention. Learning how to manage your emotions and manage your mindset is not only important for you and your life and your relationships, it's also important for you when you are interacting with a world that is really trying to prey on your emotions. When it comes to emotions, advertising and the news are two of the biggest culprits that you will ever come across. All of these people are trying to make you feel something, and the thing that they rely on the most is fear. So I'm not asking you not to be afraid or not to think critically about these things or to shut yourself away and pretend that nothing is happening. But remember that fear is a very powerful force. It drives clicks. It drives dollars being spent on candidates, and it is driving your attention right now. So I want you to start to notice when those fear mechanisms come up and try to take a look at where they're coming from. If you are watching a lot of podcasts that are really like overly dramatic and there's people arguing, then maybe it is time to disengage and take a break. Try to find your news sources from places that are as neutral as possible, and don't be afraid to come to your own conclusions about what things mean. You do not have to wait to be spoon-fed your opinion. You can come up with your own opinions based on the real research that you do. Okay, that might sound like I'm encouraging you to do your own research when it comes to COVID vaccines, and that is not what I mean at all. You get the point though. It is important for you to manage your emotions. It is important to remember that you are in control and that your thoughts create those emotions. If you are feeling that fear all of the time, then it's time to do a little self-work here. And most of the time you will find, like I said, in catastrophizing, you are believing a story that you probably don't have any proof of for a worst possible outcome. So just try to see what maybe another outcome for that same story would be. If this doesn't happen, what could possibly happen instead? What would be a neutral outcome? What could be a good outcome? It doesn't necessarily mean that these things are going to happen, but it is going to give you a sense of emotional control back, and you will see just how negative our media and news sources are. The final thought that I want to leave you with today is that the world has actually not changed that much. We have perceived a giant shift in the way the world operates or in the way America operates, but that's actually not true. The same things that were at work here a month ago, the same people are still doing that. Fast forward back before the election, when you saw these people volunteering, and you saw this amazing energy coming out for Kamala, those people still exist, and that energy still exists. It's not being broadcast to you on the news right now, but those people with those values are still there. The other people are still there. They were there beforehand. They were already there. The same people and the same structures are still here for the time being. The world has not changed that much. So you do not have to throw up your hands in the air and feel like it's the end of an era right now, because it is not. We are more or less exactly the same as we were a month ago. Does that mean this is going to stay the same way as we move into the future? No, it does not. But also, we're not that different. Things are not as different as you are making them seem in your mind. And I know there's crazy news stories about terrible things happening in the news all the time. Again, be careful where you put your attention, and don't feed some of those stories the way that they want to be fed. You do not have to give those things power. Of course, stay in your essence, take care of yourself, do the things that you want to do in your life, keep shining your light, but you do not have to let these big scary headlines intimidate you and make you play small. In fact, that's probably what they're banking on, and I really encourage you not to take the bait. On a final note, I know things are very divided right now, and I know it is just so easy to say, well, we should just listen to each other and love each other, but there is something to that. You do not have to adopt the views of someone who completely opposes you, but one of the things that I always keep in mind is that whenever I go to the United States, for my whole life, I'm Canadian. I used to go there all the time. Not so much that I live in Europe, but every time I go there, basically everybody is so lovely, so friendly, and they just seem like good-hearted people. That's a very big statement, but that's what I personally try to keep in mind as we move through these times. And I think that same advice can go for anybody. Again, it is so easy to demonize people and take everyone at the very worst, when in reality, it's not usually like that. Yeah, it is sometimes, but it is not usually like that. So let there be room for people to meet you in good ways and surprise you in good ways. Okay, so that is it for today's episode. I hope that you got something out of it, and I really hope that this episode at the very least just inspires you to take mental control back. You can read the news, but you do not have to let your emotions get poked and prodded and pushed in any direction. And if you are feeling like that is happening to you, perhaps that's a good sign to turn off TikTok, to mute your notifications, and to go read a good old-fashioned book. At the end of the day, you have to take care of your own energy. You can't pour from an empty cup. And if you are being emotionally depleted, it is time for you to do something about that. So keep that in mind, my friend. Be well, and I will see you in the next one.